and it's really a shame. Looking at this thing in New Orleans, it's obviously the whole thing is very tragic, but one of the things I'm struck by is and this is just a superficial observation that may not even be true, but it's what it kind of looks like seeing it on TV. It looks like a lot of these people don't feel like they have. There's no way they can do anything, so they're just kind of sitting there waiting to be helped.
No, I think that's true. A lot of people feel like there are no options. They have no alternative, scenarios that they can play out. And, again, we're looking at many people at the bottom end of the socioeconomic ladder, many of whom didn't complete school, et cetera. And so we go back to lack of awareness, lack of education. And I think it's a great wake-up call for the society to see how many people really are in that situation, because we tend to forget about them, drive by their neighborhoods on the superhighways and not deal with it. So I think, I agree with you. I think it's a sad commentary on the state of consciousness of a lot of people. And again, I won't hold them responsible other than that, all of us have to wake up at some point, hopefully. But usually we don't wake up until someone like a teacher comes into our life, or an event like the hurricane that can be the teacher and say, wait a second, maybe we can do a better thing here than we've been doing. And I also think it's a grand statement about our government's lack of preparedness, both on the state, local, and federal level, that we don't plan for the negative. In other words, you have to have a positive attitude. You focus on what you want. But you also, I think you have to be realistic and say, well, look, let's not deny that there are going to be Category 5 hurricanes, and if it were to happen, how are we going to deal with it? You and I are constantly thinking about, well, what if this happens, then how would we deal with it? If there is a obstacle to overcome, what are our strategies? I mean, you and I learned something from Dan Sullivan called strategy circles, where you anticipate every possible negative scenario and come up with 3 things to overcome it. So again, you focus back on getting to what you want.
Yeah, every time that I do any kind of a project around here at Centerpoint, I and some of the other people here, we sit down and we think of all the things that could go wrong. And some people would see that as focusing on the negative. But as soon as we think of something that could go wrong, we think about how we're going to keep it from going wrong, how we're going to counteract it if it does happen. And,
right.
and that keeps a lot of things from getting in the way, so that we can go forward toward where we want. Ultimately, we're focused on where we want to go, but we realize that shit happens, and if you're not prepared for it, it really can take you out.
That's absolutely correct, and you do have to have contingency plans, and that's what allows you to be masterful.
Well, it's like you said, a lot of these people at the lower end of the ladder are kind of ignored. People don't like to even be reminded that those people exist, and those people sort of fall through the cracks. Because you've spoken for this group. One of the things dear to my heart is an organization called Self-Enhancement, Inc., which is an organization in Portland, Oregon, that helps disadvantaged inner-city kids. And their motto is, life has options.
I like that.
And that's exactly what they do with these kids, is they show them that the small number of options that they see in this ghetto community are not all the options, and that the other options that they have never heard about, or if they've heard about, they dismiss them as being impossible for them, they are possible. And then, of course, as you get more and more people going through a program like they have and coming out the other end, going to college and becoming a doctor or starting a business or whatever, then other people that are in the pipeline somewhere else say, hey, other people are doing it, it's doable.
No, it's so true, and I think that's one of the things, if anyone listening to this is a parent, I mean, one of the reasons I take my kids around the world, every year we go to some other country. Last year I took my 14-year-old son to Spain and to London and to France. And at the end of that trip, he said, I think I want to live in Paris for a year when I graduate college or graduate high school. And that option didn't exist for him until he saw it. And so we want to constantly expose our kids to new options. When I was teaching in an all-black high school in Chicago back in the 1960s, most of my kids had never been more than 3 blocks away from their home. They had never been downtown to the Loop, downtown Chicago. They literally thought everyone in the world was black except the people on TV. And, we used to take them on field trips to the zoo, to downtown, just to get them to see that there are other options available to you. And so we have a responsibility to ourselves to take ourselves places we've never been and expose ourselves to new people, new ideas, new cultures, new kinds of music, etc. So we're constantly seeing that we can expand into those arenas.
Well, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, the big aha for me in this conversation has been what you said a little bit ago, that you can't be responsible for something you're unaware of.
Right.
To me, I can sort of wangle that around and think, oh yeah, I've been saying that in another way for a long time. But the way you said it was kind of a new idea to me, and I think that's really a very brilliant statement. And I hope you don't mind if I steal it and teach it to people.
You can't steal it because I'm giving it to you.
Okay. All right. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end of our time, and I was hoping that perhaps you could, since this is what you're best known for, maybe you could end by telling a couple of your more favorite Chicken Soup for the Soul stories.
Oh, sure. Let me think for a minute because I hadn't planned to do it, but I'm sure I can come up with some. I think I'll share 2 stories with you. One about the power of love and the other about the power of believing you can do anything. One of my favorite stories of all time was in the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book, and it was called Puppies for Sale. And it's about a little boy walking through a mall, and he sees a sign on a retail store, not a pet store, and it says Puppies for Sale. And so he goes inside and asks the owner if he can see the puppies. And he asks him how much they are. He says, well, I have about 6 of them, and there's about, I'm selling them for anywhere from $25 to $50, depending on the dog. And the little boy said, oh, good, can I see him? And he said, sure. And so he whistled, and out from the back of the store came this dog named Lady with 5 little tiny balls of fur behind him, or her. And the little boy noticed one of the puppies was limping. And he says, what's wrong with that puppy? He said, well, that puppy, when he was born, we had him examined, and his hip sockets malformed, and he's never going to be able to run and jump and play like the other little puppies. And the little boy said, well, that's the one I want. He said, how much? And he said, well, you really don't want that dog. He says, no, I really do. How much? And he said, well, if you really want him, I'll give it to you free. He says, no, sir, that dog's worth every bit as much as the other puppies, and I will pay full price. And he reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out $1.87 change. And he says, I'll give you $1.87 down, and I'll give you 50 cents a week till I haven't paid for it. And the owner says, son, you're not listening. That puppy will never be able to run and jump and play with you like the other puppies. And at that, the little boy reached down, and he pulled up his left pant leg all the way up to his knee to reveal a very badly twisted left leg with a big metal brace on it. He looked the owner in the eye, and he said, well, you see, mister, I don't run so well myself, and the little puppy is going to need someone who understands. Now, that story, which I just shared with you, I want to share a little wraparound with that. A woman came up to me at a conference about 2 months ago and said she was a homeless woman living on the street. She was about to commit suicide. She'd already picked out the place on the railroad tracks where she was going to kill herself. She was pregnant, and she was described by the locals as mentally ill. She was eating out of the dumpster behind the McDonald's. And she walked by a library the day before she was going to kill herself. She said, if there's a solution, it might be in a book to my problem. So she went into the library, and they were just putting out a table of inspirational books. And there was one called Chicken Soup for the Soul. She said, I picked it up, and I went over to a table, and I started leafing through it, and I found Puppies for Sale. I started to read it. And she said, when I finished that story, I broke into tears, and I realized that puppy was broken, but it didn't mean he wasn't valuable. And I realized I'm like that puppy. Just because I'm broken doesn't mean I'm not a valuable person. And she said from that day forward, she decided not to kill herself. She went and she got some help. She got off welfare. She now has a house. I believe it's in Cleveland or Columbus, Cincinnati, one of those in Ohio. She actually brings other homeless people into that house and works with them. She's now a professional speaker, and she's been on television. So the healing power of a story is very amazing.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's amazing that you can tell some of these stories without breaking up yourself.